Today, our guest is Dr. Bradley Nelson, the founder of a method called the Emotion Code, which has already improved the lives of millions of people around the world.
Thank you for coming. And our first question is, how do you feel knowing that you have improved the lives of so many people?
Well, it's really an amazing thing, and I think it could be difficult if my ego were involved in this, because I've had countless people have told me that this work has changed their lives, but I always accept their thanks graciously, but then I pass that gratitude right on to the source, really where it comes from, because that's where this work has come from, and I just work here.
Great, thank you.
So, could you please tell our audience how they can change their lives using your method?
Well, what happens to us in life is that we experience these emotionally difficult times. We go through a divorce, we go through breakups, we're bullied sometimes as children. Sometimes we listen to our parents argue and it tears us apart. Sometimes we cry ourselves to sleep at night as kids. Sometimes we have difficult work situations and difficult family situations, and life is difficult. Well, what happens to us is that as we go through these intense emotional experiences, sometimes some of the energy of those emotional experiences can become trapped in our bodies, and we refer to those energies as trapped emotions. And what we have found is that emotional energy not only is a contributing factor to diseases, but it also contributes to things like depression and anxiety and phobias and panic attacks and PTSD and eating disorders and self-sabotage of all kinds. So if you ever feel like your life is not really turning out like it could be or should be, if you're still trying to find your soulmate and you haven't found that person yet, if you feel like your bank account has holes in it and like the money keeps draining out, or like you just can't seem to get ahead, or if you've been diagnosed with some disease process, there's emotional baggage that is an underlying cause of all of those things. And so luckily now we have the Emotion Code, which is just this really easy, really simple way to find that emotional baggage and release it. Kids can learn how to do this. Kids are doing it successfully all over the world. Adults can do it. You can use it. You can learn how to do it from the book alone, and start working on your friends and your family members and helping them. And then if you want to do it and earn money doing it, we have a certification program that you can go through, and it's all done online. So it's something that it really truly is changing the lives of millions of people and has done that all over the world. So it's a very exciting thing.
That's great.
So the Emotion Code is based on emotions, and are trapped emotions the cause of all our problems?
Well, what we have found is that trapped emotions are the underlying cause. They're implicated in every disease process. For example, in my own practice, every disease that I saw, every person that came into me that had cancer or that had fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue or some other kind of disease, there was always emotional baggage that was a component of that disease. And all of our practitioners all over the world, we have almost 10,000 of them now in 80 countries, they're all seeing the same thing, that emotional baggage is a very significant component to every disease process. Now, sometimes it's the only component. I mean, imagine having a disease and being diagnosed with a disease that was purely the result of some emotional baggage, some emotional experience you went through. That happens. Other times, the emotional baggage is a lesser component, but it's always there. And so, luckily now we're living in an age when we have this method where we can find that baggage and get rid of it. And you don't even have to go to somebody to do it. You can do it on your own if you want to, although we have practitioners all over the world. And there's a Google map of those at discoverhealing.com.
Okay, so what is the other component? You said emotions, and there could be other components of the disease, for example.
Right.
So what could that be?
Well, when I was in practice, the first most powerful thing that I learned was that the subconscious mind is really a computer. Now, I took a computer programming class when I went to college in Hawaii in 1980, many years before either one of you were born. But I really fell in love with computers. And so I became a computer programmer. And when I went to chiropractic school, I can remember listening to my instructors say things like, the brain is the most amazing computer that exists. And I can remember sitting there thinking, wow, if the brain is really a computer, will we ever be able to tap into it and ask it questions and get answers from it? Because, wow, that would be the greatest way to help our patients, right? And that's exactly what this work is. Mm-hmm. So about 80% of our problems are due to emotional baggage. The rest of it, the other 20%, are due to other kinds of imbalances. So when I was in practice working with all of these really sick people, in fact, during the last 10 years that I was in practice, most of the people that I saw had been told there was really no hope for them at all. There was nothing could ever be done for them. And so those were the kind of people that I saw. And by tapping into their subconscious minds and asking questions and getting answers, I found that there are really 6 different categories of imbalances that cause all of our problems. Now, the most common kind of imbalance that causes symptoms for us is our emotional baggage. But beyond that, there can be other things. You can have a pathogen that can get into the body. You might pick up a parasite somewhere. You might have a viral infection. You've got to get rid of those if you're going to be healthy, right? Another kind of imbalance is structural misalignments. Bones can become misaligned. Organs, tissues, glands, whatever, can become misaligned in the body, and then that can create malfunction as well. And then maybe you've got some kind of a deficiency of a certain vitamin or mineral. Maybe you are dehydrated. Maybe you need a certain essential oil or a certain herb or something, right? So those are other ways that we can become imbalanced. We can become imbalanced because we're toxic. Maybe when you were young, you got metal fillings in your mouth that contain mercury, and the mercury is now poisoning you. Maybe you have a root canal tooth. Maybe that's poisoning you. Maybe you were exposed just to normal diet in the West, where there's a lot of food additives and things. And so those toxins need to be removed from the body for you to be totally healthy. Another kind of imbalance has to do with the circuitry and the systems of the body. The acupuncture meridians can become imbalanced, the chakras, things like that. And one of the things that I found was that sometimes the spirit within us can become disconnected from the physical body, and that can create trouble as well. And that's in the body code. So in other words, we can become imbalanced in a lot of different ways. After the Emotion Code book came out, and by the way, the Emotion Code book came out the same month that the iPhone was introduced, which was kind of fun. That's how long it's been around. But it continues to spread throughout the world. But about a year after I had published the Emotion Code, I woke up one morning and my mind was full of instruction. And the instruction was, you need to take everything that you've learned about natural healing and put it into a self-study course that anyone can learn and make it available to everyone everywhere. And so that is what we call the Body Code, and that's an app that will soon be available in Polish, by the way.
Great, thank you.
So you're saying that we can heal every problem in our life by using your method?
Well, I think you can heal maybe just about everything. I think it's possible you can fix everything, yes. Sometimes some people stay sick for some reason. Sometimes some people have something to learn from a sickness that they haven't learned yet. What I used to tell my patients was, if you've learned everything that you need to learn from this sickness, then if God is willing, you should be able to get over this with no problem, right? But I think that there's always going to be a need for Western medicine, right? There will always be a need for drugs in certain cases. Sometimes people will need surgery, but we know that surgery is really overutilized, and we know that pharmaceutical drugs are also widely overutilized. In the United States, for example, they're considered one of the top 4 leading causes of death is prescription medications taken according to the prescription, and that's probably been eclipsed now by other things. But anyway.
Okay, you said before that kids use the emotion code, and is it safe for pregnant women, also kids in specific age or animals, to use the method? To use the emotion code for animals, for example?
Yes, the emotion code works really, really well for animals. In fact, it's one of the most unique and fun things about the emotion code. When people go through emotion code certification, one of the requirements is they have to work with at least 5 animals, because when they do that, they're going to find that things improve and things get better. And there's no placebo effect with animals, but yet animals do experience emotions, and they develop emotional baggage just like we do. And then it manifests in these physical or behavioral ways.
Okay, and pregnant women, is it safe for them?
Yes, absolutely safe for pregnant women, you bet. However, one thing that I would say is that in the emotion code, we teach how you can use a magnet to release the emotional baggage by sliding that magnet over the governing meridian. And what we recommend is, if you're working with a woman, to not use a magnet. It's best to not really recommend anything like herbs or anything to a pregnant woman because of the state that she's in. And but you can also just use your hand. So if you don't have a magnet, no problem, just use your hand. Yeah.
And are there any contraindications for this method?
There are really no contraindications to this, no.
That's great.
So people sometimes ask me, well, what if someone is mentally ill? Well, if someone is really mentally ill, hopefully they're under some kind of supervision, and you could certainly work with whoever's supervising that. Sometimes people ask me, well, what about if someone is on medication, or will that interfere with the testing and so on? And the answer is no, it doesn't really interfere. Think about it this way. When we come into this world, we have generally speaking, we have a clear, clean energy field, right? And then as we live our life, we start to accumulate more and more emotional baggage. And you can think of every trapped emotion as being like a little dark cloud of energy in that energy field of ours. And so pretty soon, when a person gets to be an adult, that pure, pristine, clear energy field might look like, a really cloudy day, right? With a thunderstorm here and there. And as you start to remove that baggage, what's left behind? That pure, clean, clear energy field. So it's always a good thing to remove that emotional baggage and get back to the kind of person that you were intended to be.
So everyone can use it, like everyone, a little child and really old men.
Yeah, anyone can use it. And that's one of the beautiful things about it. It gives people a way to, it can give people a way through the certification program. It can give them a way to make a living and have freedom really in their life, because suddenly now they can have clientele in other countries, the clientele that might span the globe. And so people can be free to travel, and they can set their own hours and so on. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to make a living as a certified emotion code practitioner, and at the same time you're actually really helping people and making a difference in their lives. And that's a wonderful thing.
It is.
So you said before that for the method, for the process of releasing, locating trapped emotions, you need a magnet. And do you need anything else to use the method?
Well, we use the emotion code chart, and that's the little chart of emotions that's available. It's in the book and so on. And and again, if you don't have a magnet, you can use your hand. So that's really about all that you need. Yeah.
What we know we need to use muscle tests, right? So could you tell us more about it? How does it work?
Well, muscle testing is just a really simple way to determine the state that the subconscious mind is in. In other words, if you think about someone who's hooked up to a polygraph machine, a lie detector, if they're telling lies, the machine will tell the tale, right? It will, the person who's operating the machine will know if the person is lying because the body gives this involuntary response. So what's interesting is that when a person is, when we're asking questions of the subconscious mind, there are responses that the subconscious mind is giving all the time. If you're asking the body a question and the answer is yes, then that will be reflected in the body being strong. If you ask the body a question, or if you ask the subconscious mind a question and the answer is no, that will be reflected by the muscles of the body being slightly weaker. And so with muscle testing, we can ask questions and then pick up those subtle changes that are taking place in the subconscious mind. And that way, we can ask questions and get answers from the most powerful computer I think that exists.
Okay, so everybody can use the muscle test?
Yeah, everyone can learn how to do muscle testing, absolutely. I mean, young children, I think it would probably be hard for them, although I have seen kids as young as 5 years old learn how to do the testing on themselves. So they can do it. I think that sometimes as adults, we get older and we learn about all the things we shouldn't be able to do. And so sometimes it's harder for adults than kids to learn how to do it.
But how do we know we're not manipulating? Like, I can put my fingers strong and I can fake the test.
Yeah.
How to fully connect to your subconscious.
You could fake the test. Well, what you're trying to do, it's a subtle kind of thing. There are two mistakes that people usually make with muscle testing, especially self-muscle testing. One mistake that most people make is they use way too much force. So it's not a force thing. It's really more of a finesse kind of thing. The amount of force that I use now, if I'm doing this method, which we call the ring and ring test, if I found a little ladybug, for example, on this plant, and if I were to take it outside and let it go, how much force would I use? Almost none, right? That's about how much force I use now when I'm doing a test like this. So you can't force it. It is a little bit of a skill, the muscle testing, especially the self-testing. But in the book and in the seminars and things and in the certification program, we give you guidelines that help you to learn how to do it. But people can also use other devices. You can use a pendulum, for example. That works the same way. All it's doing is magnifying the response from the body. So those work. Any kind of dowsing device. I'm sure that here in Poland, there are people that, I'm sure there are dowsers here, and I'm sure that there were probably a lot more of them 150 years ago. Because, I mean, think about it. When a village was going to be settled and you needed to dig a well, how would you know where to dig it? Well, somebody in the village would be a dowser, and they'd come along with a forked stick maybe, and they'd say, okay, we need to dig here. And then it was going to take 6 months of back-breaking labor, and sure enough, there's the water. Think about that. That's how the whole world was set up